Choosing your first airplane can be like being a cat deciding which laser pointer to chase first. Overwhelming. I want to warn you before buying your first model airplane and falling into a trap that many people fall into. So today I'm going to tell you what the trap is and guide you towards a path that will keep you flying for longer and avoid from you getting discouraged. But first, let me show you what happened when I made these mistakes back when I was beginning to fly RC planes myself. Back in 2005, when I first got into this hobby, I spent ages researching how to begin. After spending countless hours on forums, I decided to scratch build a plane called Viherek, made of spruce, plywood and covered by tissue paper, with a 2-stroke glow plug engine powering it. After countless hours of building, the final result was decent for a first-time build. The first challenge came in the form of what's called an engine run-in process. Now, glow engines need to go through this process on the ground to make sure internal surfaces of the engine pair up with each other, kind of get running delicately so that everything kind of lines up and they pair up quite well. I struggled for a few hours to get this thing even started, but eventually I followed the instructions and the engine was ready to go. I then installed it in the plane and off I went to fly the plane for the first time. I had nobody knowledgeable to help me, and I vividly remember my hands just shaking. I filled up the fuel tank, I started up the motor, and my dad helped me to release it into the air. But the plane only followed a semicircle without any successful climbing and finally crashed into the ground. I was devastated. I thought I followed all of the instructions I could find, but it didn't climb. Why? Well, let me explain. I fell into a trap. The trap that you don't want to be falling into as a beginner. I've seen a countless number of posts online asking whether the fast jet, the magnificent looking warbird, or the FPV setup the person's chosen are of good quality for a first-time pilot. I do see the appeal of having retractable undercarriage on a beautiful F-16 and with all the bells and whistles that may come with it. However, on your first flights, you will be learning to fly. Your hands will probably shake like you're about to have a seizure, and you are likely to get disoriented.
Just how serious is it, Doctor?
Extremely serious. Starts with a slight fever, dryness of the throat. As the virus penetrates the red blood cells, the victim becomes dizzy. Begins to experience an itching, a rash. From there, the poison goes to work on the central nervous system, causing severe muscle spasms, followed by the inevitable drooling. At this point, the entire digestive system collapses, accompanied by uncontrollable flatulence, until finally the poor bastard is reduced to a quivering, wasted piece of jelly.
You're going to have to put a lot of effort towards thinking about reversing the controller inputs when the plane turns around and faces towards you. What this means is you want to avoid the trap of complexity. The plane you're going to be training on should be exactly this, a trainer. Now, in my case, even though the plane I've chosen was a trainer, I could have eliminated a lot of complexity by getting rid of the glow plug engine and just sticking to an electric motor. Because what happened was that I didn't tune the engine on the day of my first flight. Glow plug engines have carburetors, and these have to be tuned each time you go out to the field to fly. And as a 13-year-old, I wasn't able to figure that out. So what is the right path for you to follow? Well, to begin with, what I would recommend is to learn in a low consequence environment. There are ways to connect an RC transmitter to a computer through a USB cable and practice flying models on a simulator. I did this when learning to fly. I connected my radio transmitter to my PC and then I found a free RC aeroplane sim that trained me a very important thing. It trained me to enter the correct inputs based on the direction the plane was headed. If the plane is flying away from you, To turn right, you push the aileron stick to the right. But if the plane is flying towards you and you want the plane to turn right, you have to push the aileron stick to the left. This step is important because when adrenaline kicks in, at the moment you see your plane diving for the ground or flying in a direction you don't want it to, you'll be reacting to a situation without really thinking. Just like you would if you saw a tennis ball headed towards your head, you'd put your hands up to cover your face. So what sort of a plane is a good choice? In my opinion, foam is good, generally cheaper and easier to repair. And electric is easier than petrol or glow engines because you don't have to fiddle around with carburetor tuning, additional equipment to get the motor started, fuel, wiping down your plane from whatever came out of the two-stroke exhaust. Plus, tuning a carburetor is the thing I failed to do correctly, and you want to save yourself as much trouble as possible at the start. If you want to do it later, go for it. And then high wing, possibly pusher propeller to stop you from breaking propellers or motor mounts when landing or crash landing or not landing very well because you're still learning to land. It's okay to build your own, I did, but purchasing a plane could be a simpler way to go as there's a whole lot to learn when building. And avoid those fast jets with EDF fans. Save them for later if you want to. They're fun, but you want to learn and you don't want to crash that thing right away.